What started as a routine interview quickly spiraled into something no one expected. A pointed remark was made on live TV, sharp enough to cut through the laughter and freeze the entire room. But what came next? No one, not even the audience, was ready for her response. The air went still, jaws dropped, and silence filled the studio. What did she say that left everyone speechless? Keep watching. Live television is a unique space. It happens in real time without filters or second chances. Every word said, every reaction shown, becomes part of the moment. That's what makes it powerful, but also risky. Viewers watch closely, not just for entertainment, but to catch moments that reveal something real. In one particular case, this raw and unpredictable nature of live TV led to a moment that people would talk about long after the cameras stopped rolling. During a popular late-night show, a conversation began like many others. The setting was familiar. A smiling host, a well-lit stage, and an invited guest known for their role in public service. The audience warmed up and ready, clapped and laughed as the show moved along. But beneath the humor and casual talk, the show often touched on serious political or social topics, mixing jokes with commentary on real-world issues. As the host shifted the topic toward something more sensitive, the tone changed. A few lighthearted comments were made, followed by a statement that didn't feel like part of the usual scripted humor. The audience reaction wasn't laughter this time. It was a pause, a kind of silence that usually means people are processing what they just heard. The words said by the host were not just a joke. They had weight. They came across as a direct jab, more personal than playful. It wasn't only what was said, but how it was said. An expression, a tone of voice, a timing that made it clear this wasn't just for laughs. It felt like something more targeted. When someone on live television, especially a host with influence and a large following, makes a strong remark about a guest, it shapes how the audience sees that person. In this case, the remark touched on the guest's past actions, reputation, or decisions in a way that didn't feel respectful. It came off as sharp, maybe even aggressive. People watching at home began to post on social media almost immediately. Some were surprised, some were uncomfortable, and some felt the moment crossed a line. The studio audience too sensed it. There was a stillness in the room that wasn't part of the usual energy of the show. A few nervous laughs could be heard, but mostly people waited to see what would happen next. It was clear that the moment had gone beyond what anyone expected from a casual interview segment. This moment is important to study because it shows how live television can quickly shift from entertainment to something deeper. When a person in a position of influence makes a bold or controversial statement on live TV, it sends a message, intentional or not. In this case, the message came through loud and clear. The host used their platform to express a viewpoint or criticism that struck at the guest personally, not just professionally. Many viewers later said they didn't expect such a moment to unfold during a regular episode of a talk show. The comment didn't follow the usual rhythm of playful banter. It felt more like an attack or an insult, especially because it happened in front of a live audience and millions of viewers. People questioned whether the host was using humor as a cover for something more serious, and whether the joke was meant to expose or embarrass. The situation also raised questions about responsibility. What responsibility does a host have when inviting someone on their show? Is it fair to catch someone off guard and put them in a defensive position? These are questions that media experts and viewers began to discuss. When someone appears on live television, they often expect a certain level of professionalism. But in this case, that expectation seemed to be broken. The remark made during that moment didn't just affect the person it was aimed at. It changed the energy of the entire episode. It reminded people watching that live TV while entertaining can also become a place where power dynamics play out in real time. The host had control of the stage, the microphone, and the audience's attention. Using that control to deliver a sharp comment made the guest appear vulnerable, even if only for a few seconds. This kind of situation shows how fast things can escalate on live television. One comment, one tone shift, one unexpected turn can change the whole meaning of a conversation. What started as a regular interview became something much more tense and emotional. For the audience in the studio and at home, it was a moment they wouldn't forget, not because of humor, but because of how raw and unfiltered it felt. In live television, words carry a special kind of weight. There is no editing, no delay, and no second take. Every sentence said reaches the audience in its rawest form. This is why the way something is said and how it is received matters so much. In one particular moment that caught public attention, a comment made during a live broadcast was not seen as part of the usual humor or debate. Instead, many viewers took it as a direct insult. The moment came during what was supposed to be a typical talk show conversation. The guest was someone with a long history in public service and had been part of many heated discussions before. The show was known for its mix of political topics and comedy, often walking a thin line between serious critique and entertainment. But in this case, the line was clearly crossed in the eyes of many people watching. As the interview progressed, the conversation moved from general questions to more pointed topics. Then came a remark that didn't sound like a joke or an ordinary question. It had a sharp tone, with words chosen in a way that made it feel personal. While the exact wording may have seemed playful to some, the delivery and context made the real intention clear. It wasn't lighthearted. It felt like an attempt to embarrass or put the guest on the spot in front of a live audience. What made it stand out was how unexpected it was. The guest was answering calmly and respectfully, and there had been no sign of tension before the remark. But once those words were spoken, everything changed. The studio quieted, and people stopped clapping and laughing. It was as if the room had frozen for a second, unsure how to react. Viewers at home reacted just as quickly. Many took to social media to share their thoughts. Some were shocked that such a comment would be made in that setting. Others felt it was unprofessional and crossed a line that should not be crossed during a public interview. It was no longer about policy or past decisions. The moment felt like it was designed to shame rather than discuss. This kind of moment teaches an important lesson about communication, especially on live platforms. When a person makes a comment that feels more like a personal attack than a constructive point, it changes the entire purpose of the conversation. It becomes less about ideas and more about confrontation. In educational terms, it becomes an example of what happens when critical dialogue turns into disrespect. What also made the moment intense was the imbalance of power. The person who made the comment had control over the stage, the pace of the conversation, and the support of a live audience. That gave the words extra power. It wasn't just one person talking to another. It was someone using their position in front of millions to criticize someone who had no control over the direction of the discussion. For many who saw the broadcast, the remark felt like a clear signal. It suggested that the guest wasn't welcome, or that their views were being mocked instead of questioned. This is an important distinction. In a healthy discussion, even tough questions can be asked with respect. But when a question turns into a dig, it no longer invites a thoughtful answer. It shuts the door on dialogue. The insult, as perceived by many, also raised ethical questions. Should people in the media use their platforms to take personal shots at others, especially when those people are invited guests? Is it fair to hide behind humor or live show energy when saying things that are clearly intended to provoke? These are the kinds of questions that communication students and professionals continue to study and debate. The situation quickly became a public talking point. Analysts, media critics, and viewers all had something to say. Some defended the moment as bold or honest, while others said it was uncalled for. But most agreed on one thing. The comment changed the tone of the show entirely. It wasn't entertainment anymore. It was something more serious, more uncomfortable, and more reflective of the speaker's attitude than of the guest's actions. Even though the moment lasted only a few seconds, its impact continued well after the show ended. Clips of the comment spread online, and people replayed it to examine exactly what was said and how it was delivered. The facial expressions, the pause that followed, and the response it triggered became subjects of discussion. It showed how just a few words, spoken live, can carry the force of an insult when they are wrapped in sarcasm, delivered without warning, and aimed at someone unprepared. This single moment became more than just a headline. It became a lesson in how tone, timing, and choice of words can turn a conversation into controversy. When something unexpected happens on live television, it can change the entire energy in the room. After a sharp and personal comment was made during a live interview, all eyes turned to the guest. The situation had grown tense, and the atmosphere in the studio was no longer light or relaxed. Viewers at home and people in the audience were wondering how the guest would react. What came next surprised everyone and quickly became one of the most talked about moments of the broadcast. Instead of getting angry or upset, the guest remained completely calm. There was no sign of fear, panic, or discomfort. The reaction was composed, thoughtful, and sharp. Not in a rude way, but in a way that showed control, intelligence, and confidence. It wasn't just a reaction, it was a response. And the difference between those two things became clear at that moment. The guest didn't raise their voice or show frustration. Instead, they chose their words carefully. They began by addressing the comment directly but without using the same tone or attitude. The reply focused on truth, experience, and facts rather than emotion or insult. The way the guest spoke showed a clear understanding of the situation, as if they had prepared for something like this, even though it was live and completely unplanned. What made the response so effective was the calm delivery. The guests did not lower themselves to the level of sarcasm or mockery. They didn't laugh it off or ignore it either. They faced it head-on, but with a level of grace that made the audience stop and listen. There was no need for loud words or dramatic gestures, just a steady voice and confident body language. This approach had a powerful effect. The audience, who had been laughing and clapping earlier in the show, became completely silent. There were no gasps or outbursts, just stillness. That silence meant something. It was a form of respect, even if unspoken. People could feel that. Something important had just happened. They saw someone handle an uncomfortable situation not by attacking back, but by staying in control. The guest also used logic and real-world examples to support their words. Rather than just defending themselves, they shifted the conversation in a more meaningful direction. The attention moved away from the insult and toward something deeper. This shift allowed the guest to turn a moment of discomfort into a teaching opportunity, not by force, but by example. This kind of response teaches a valuable lesson. In moments when someone tries to make you look small, the strongest reply is often not to fight back in the same way, but to rise above it. The guest didn't try to win the moment with anger. They showed strength through restraint and intelligence. That made their response even more powerful. People were not just listening to what was being said, they were watching how it was being said, and that left a lasting impact. The shift in energy could be felt even through the screen. People watching at home later commented on how unexpected the reply was. Many said they didn't expect such a calm and firm answer to such a bold comment. But that surprise was what made it special. In a setting where conflict often draws more attention than wisdom, this moment stood out because it reversed the usual pattern. Even the host, who had delivered the original comment, appeared momentarily caught off guard. The response was not what they had likely prepared for. That showed how powerful clear and calm speech can be when used with purpose. When someone refuses to be shaken or dragged into negativity, it changes the rules of the exchange. It shows that even in tense or unfair situations, dignity can take center stage. This event became more than just a part of the show. It became a real-time lesson in how to manage pressure, how to protect one's self-respect, and how to shift the power in a conversation through calm and confident words. The guest turned the situation around without yelling, accusing, or mocking. They didn't try to prove anything. They just stood in their truth, and that was enough. For anyone who finds themselves facing public pressure or unfair treatment, this moment shows what is possible when you stay centered and respond with strength, instead of reaction. The silence in the studio wasn't just because of surprise. It was because people understood they had witnessed something rare, a moment of real grace, live on air, when most would expect anything but. There are moments on live television that leave a deep impression, not because they are loud or dramatic, but because of the quiet that follows. After a tense exchange between a guest and a host during a live show, something very unusual happened. The guest had just responded to what many viewers believed was a personal insult. But instead of reacting with anger or sarcasm, the guest answered with calm, thoughtful words that were both respectful and powerful. What followed that response was complete silence, not just from the guest or the host, but from the entire studio audience. At first, it wasn't clear how the audience would react. The comment made earlier by the host had clearly changed the mood in the room. People were unsure whether to laugh, stay quiet, or look for some kind of signal that everything was still okay. But after hearing the guest's reply, there was no doubt about the seriousness of the moment. It was not the kind of reply people were used to hearing in that kind of setting. It was direct but polite, strong but calm. It felt different. And that difference is what led to the silence. Usually, live shows are filled with sound, clapping, laughing, cheering, or reacting to jokes and questions. Studio audiences are often guided to respond loudly to keep the energy high. But at this moment, all of that disappeared. No one laughed, no one clapped, no one even whispered. People just sat still, absorbing what had just been said. It was not the kind of silence that comes from boredom or confusion. It was the kind that comes from deep respect, or from realizing you just witnessed something important. In communication studies, this type of silence is meaningful. It's not empty. It's full of understanding, emotion, and sometimes even admiration. The audience didn't need to say anything. Their silence showed that they understood the power of the guest's words. They also understood that something had shifted. What started as an uncomfortable exchange had now turned into a real and powerful moment of clarity. What makes this moment so educational is how silence can speak louder than words. In many ways, the reaction of the audience added to the impact of the guest's response. It showed that people were not expecting such a powerful answer, and when they heard it, they didn't know how to follow it. There was nothing to laugh at, nothing to debate. It was a complete moment, finished with the kind of silence that only truth can bring. This silence also affected the host. For a brief moment, even they paused, clearly caught off guard. The usual rhythm of the show was broken. That pause in the conversation gave everyone, on stage and in the audience, a chance to reflect. There was no quick comeback, no shift to another topic, no joke to move things forward, just quiet. That quiet allowed the moment to breathe, and it gave weight to what had just been said. Many people who watched the show later said that the silence was the most powerful part of the entire exchange. In a space designed for entertainment and energy, silence became the strongest reaction. It wasn't forced. It wasn't planned. It happened naturally because the words spoken deserved it. The studio, once full of noise and movement, turned into a place of stillness. That stillness became the proof that the guest's message had truly landed. After the show, viewers online also commented on the silence. They weren't just talking about the words themselves. They were talking about how rare it is to see a live audience respond with such quiet. Some said it was the most respectful silence they had ever seen on a talk show. Others said they felt the same pause while watching from home, as if the silence had reached through the screen. This moment shows something important about live communication. The most powerful reaction isn't always the loudest. Sometimes silence says everything. It shows understanding, respect, and even shock. In this case, the silence meant that the audience had truly listened. They had stopped reacting and started thinking. They had moved beyond entertainment and entered into something more real. The fact that the audience responded with such quietness made the entire event stand out. It gave the guests' words more meaning and more space to be remembered. The silence itself became a kind of message. It showed that the truth, when spoken with clarity and confidence, needs no extra support. It stands on its own. And when that truth is heard live without preparation or protection, the most natural response is sometimes no response at all, just silence. When someone speaks in public, especially on live television, their words don't just stay in the room. They travel. They echo across social media, news headlines, and online discussions. That's exactly what happened after a surprising and powerful moment unfolded during a well-known talk show. A guest had responded to an unexpected and personal comment with calm strength. That moment, quiet and respectful, soon turned into a topic of national attention. It started with one clip. A short video of the exchange was shared online just minutes after the show aired. At first, it was shared by people who had watched live and were amazed at what they had witnessed. But soon the clip was everywhere. It began trending across major platforms. People who had missed the show were now watching and re-watching the guest's reply. They were also reacting, not just with likes or shares, but with full discussions. The public response came fast and strong. Many people praised the guest for staying calm and composed. They admired how the reply didn't match the harshness of the original comment, but instead rose above it. Some said the moment showed real strength. Others said it was a lesson in how to handle disrespect with dignity. The reaction crossed political lines, with people from different sides agreeing that the response deserved attention and respect. Writers, columnists, and communication experts also joined the conversation. Opinion pieces were written in newspapers and on popular blogs. They analyzed every part of the moment, the timing, the body language, the silence that followed. One article described it as a masterclass in public poise. Another said it was an example of how true leadership looks during moments of tension. The guest's words, though simple and clear, had created a ripple effect far bigger than expected. This kind of public reaction doesn't happen often. It only takes place when something real is seen by many people at once. In this case, what made it real was the way the guest chose to respond. The reply wasn't loud or emotional. It was honest, thoughtful, and grounded. And because it happened live, without planning, it felt even more authentic. That authenticity is what people connected with most. Social media continued to carry the moment forward. Hashtags were created. Quotes from the guest's response were posted in graphics and short videos. People used the moment as an example in other discussions, from workplace communication to public speaking classes. In some schools, it was even used as a case study in how to respond to criticism respectfully. The message had gone from a single reply on a live show to a national teaching moment. The impact also reached into areas beyond media and education. Public figures commented on it, including former officials, authors, and activists. Some said the moment gave them hope. Others said it reminded them that even in divided times, respectful communication can still make a strong impression. In a world where arguments often get louder and more personal, this quiet and respectful reply stood out. Even days after the original moment aired, people were still talking about it. Podcasts mentioned it. News channels replayed the clip. Comments from viewers continued to pour in. The discussion became not just about what was said, but how it was said, and why it mattered. The way the guest handled the situation reminded people that dignity doesn't require shouting, and confidence doesn't require conflict. In the end, the response became bigger than the show. It became a reminder that one clear voice, when used wisely, can echo far beyond the moment. It proved that the most powerful impact sometimes comes from stillness, grace, and choosing words that build instead of break. Public reaction showed that people still notice and remember when someone chooses strength over anger, calm over chaos, and respect over insult. It turned one quiet answer into a national conversation.